let me just start. I want to, I want to get to know, I mean, I know your background, but I want to get to know a little bit about you just for the listeners out there. Tell me a little bit about your career journey. Like, how did you decide, because you were in the corporate world, how did you decide to leave the corporate world and start your own business?
I always tell people that I was an accidental entrepreneur. So for the first 10 or 12 years of my career, I worked for other people. I sold my time to other people. I worked for big corporations, and then I worked for smaller, more entrepreneurial, scrappy, not startups, but scale up companies. And I actually had a really surprising and negative experience that led me to the place where I wanted to start my own business. And there's a lot of people who have similar experiences to this, but I was working for a company that, in sort of the darkest days of our economy, right after the 2001, September 11th, 2001, the tech industry was hit really hard, and we were an organization was that in that ecosystem, and the company had made some really bad decisions about how it was spending its money and how it was treating its not just its employees, but their families, customers, community, things like that. And I felt misaligned with the values of the organization. And I thought, you know what? I feel like there's a lot of risk to me being part of an organization where just being here is compromising to my integrity. So, what had happened was the organization, I think I told you this story before, the organization threw a massive employee party where they literally bought out the entire town of Monterey, California, flew all of the employees from every site there. And when I say they bought out the entire town, like rented every hotel room, closed down every
Wow.
restaurant and bar, like rented every space, including the Monterey Bay Aquarium. We were having like an employee awards ceremony. We were literally giving away cars to people who had recruited people to be hired at the company and things like that. We flew home from that. Everybody flew home on Sunday from that. And on Monday morning, before I even got to the office, I got a call from my boss who reported directly to the CEO of the company to tell me he was leaving, that I was getting promoted, and I was going to report directly to the CEO. And for my first act as senior VP, I needed to pick 72 people in the Austin office to let go by the end of the day. And I had a crisis of conscience. And like I went through that. I lived through that. I also unfortunately put a whole bunch of really, really sad, unfortunate people through that. And then I sort of started this pivot to what can I do where I have more control over my own destiny, because I never want anything like that to happen to me or to unsuspecting employees again. And like a lot of crazy entrepreneurs, I was like, you know what? There's no risk in starting my own business. I'm going to start my own business. So it really was like a pivotal event that sent me to this place where I felt like it was a compulsion. I had to start my own business. And when I say like accidental entrepreneurship, I literally started out as an independent consultant. I think I stole a couple of clients from the agency that I was working from, and I stood up my own little consulting gig and whatever. And I was billing by the hour, and it was just me. And then from there, there was a lot of demand for what I was doing because it was pretty unique and highly specialized. And there weren't a lot of people who were doing it the way that I was doing. So I had to start hiring helpers. And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're like, oh my gosh, I have a company, I have employees, and I have infrastructure, and I need to provide benefits to these people, and I need systems and processes, and I need to delegate, and I have a real company. It's not just me now. So that was kind of the trajectory from getting from like corporate to having my own business, with some twists and turns in between where, a lot of people do this unless they are starting off with a services company or they have a product or something like that. I literally just sold my time by the hour for a couple of years, which I made a metric buttload of money. Don't get me wrong. I made a lot of money, but I literally was working every minute of every day, because if you don't work, you don't get paid in that scenario. And I
Yeah,
knew that I
we
needed
know how.
something that was far more scalable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was going to say, I'm just rewinding. I mean, the story, it's unfortunate. I mean, having to have like such a huge party and then you have to let 72 people go. And I
Not a
mean,
good
those are,
look. Yeah, the
no, and it's
optics were
also,
bad, as they say.
and it's also just like 72 families, not only just employees, it's 72 families that it's being affected to.
Yeah, my daughter was
So,
4 at the time. I mean, she was little. I was a single mom. In my case, I was like, well, I'm really fortunate that I'm one of the people who's left behind. I felt like I was a member of the string quartet on the deck of the Titanic as the ship is like going vertical in the
yeah.
water. You know what I mean? But yes, I mean, it was 72 families that were impacted. It wasn't just those employees. Some of those people, like I still have relationships with some of those people, from throughout the years. It was a really long time ago. It was more than 20 years ago. But at the same time, there are other people like I never spoke to again. And I think it was because they couldn't face that. I mean, it was so horrific what happened. And I was like, I never want to be part of anything like that again. I really need to be in a place where I can make the decisions. I can feel good about those decisions. I can enter and exit decisions with my integrity intact. So it was just manifest destiny. I had to have my own company.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you are here today, and I was going to say, how large did you grow your team to? Because you did a lot of hiring.
I did
I
a
don't
lot of
know.
hiring. I've also done a lot of firing. I've done a lot of like getting back
You
and
are an
stuff like
expert
that.
entrepreneur.
Yeah, yeah. No, like at its height, like I had about 25 employees at my company. I didn't like that. I didn't make very much money when it got that big. We also weren't offering anything that was like truly unique, that was in our unique zone of genius. And that was never my goal. And it's interesting. I actually had this conversation with someone this morning, like a guy who used to work for me, and he works another corporate job now, and he's thinking about going out on his own. And what I intimated to him was I had a tendency to like listen to all of these external voices that were telling me things like grow or die, like you got to scale it, you got to get it really big. The only way to be successful is to have lots and lots of employees. Well, I can tell you, as the number of employees grew, the margins shrunk.
Yeah.
And also, it's not what you make, it's what you get to keep. And for me, things like work-life integration have always been paramount. Like one of the reasons that I started my own business, not just because I wanted to have control and not just because I'm a terrible employee, but because I wanted to truly have work-life integration. I don't believe in this concept of work-life balance. I don't believe that it exists, but I believe that you can integrate your work and life and have a very, very healthy, profitable, growing, sustainable lifestyle business that supports not just you, but other families, and everyone can be healthy, happy, well fed, and well paid. And that was truly my goal.
Yeah. So what have you learned from your just the years that you've hired, fired, just what have you learned from that? I mean, in terms of just what learnings have you taken out of that?
Oh my gosh, that's such a big question.
It is a big question. That's why I'm
Yeah,
trying
I
to.
mean, I've been hiring and firing and growing and shrinking and pivoting and all this kind of stuff for years and years and years. I think what I can share with you is like sort of like the more recent learning. So probably over the last 5 years, I've really, really honed in on how I hire. And I have I came to this realization after having several like really crappy, specifically this position of director of operations, which like that director of operations position, I had several bad hires, and I went back and I really analyzed like what did all of these things have in common, and what I learned,
Yeah.
I have a tendency to hire people I like. And just because I like you doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to serve me and my company very well. And so the biggest takeaway I've had is I did a very, very deep dive on top grading as a practice and learned it and use it and teach it to others and relentlessly follow the process of top grading so that I can prioritize hiring A players. A players being, and this is the way that the authors of Top Grading define it, like people who really represent the top 10% of all candidates for any position. These are people for whom like they can generate upwards of 4 times their salary in value. And I'm looking for people who can, they can justify like 8 times their salary in value that they generate for the organization, either by servicing or growing accounts and things like that. So the biggest thing I learned is that hiring people you like doesn't necessarily get you the best people, but hiring A players and using a methodical process to suss those out is. So that's like probably the biggest thing that I've learned. And I created a world where I had a bunch of really fun people around me, none of whom could get anything done because we didn't like each other so much. So yeah, that was
a lesson to hire people that you don't like.
Well, it's a bonus. It's a bonus. So my big takeaway, for years I thought like I don't deserve to make money. I don't deserve to be profitable. I don't deserve to be paid a big salary. I don't and it's like no, as the leader of this organization, I take all the risk. My signature is on everything. I have major clients. Like my clients are household name brands in the technology and professional services industries. Those contracts, like there's so much risk in me, like guaranteeing those contracts, not just like my reputation, but like, financial liability and things like that. I have to be extremely thoughtful about who I have around me. And at the same time, it's okay. I'm taking all the risk for everyone. It's okay for me to make money too. So that was another big learning. So when you think about, because your question was like, do you hire people that you don't like? No. I really like people who help me make money. It's a bonus that we're having a good time while we're doing it. And that's,
okay.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Like, I don't not like anyone who works for me. I've just hired better people because I haven't just gone to like, oh, I love hanging out with this person. They make a great employee. That's not always the case.
Yeah. And it's funny because I've seen that in companies that we work with. They always have a feeling based, and then they're like, oh, I really like this person. But it has to be based on data because they do a feeling based. Then you find all reasons why you want to hire this person. And then, of course, you hire them, but they're not always the best employees. So we always do kind of a top grading. We know that approach as well.
Yeah.
But we do top grading. We also do, we base it off of data, and we make sure that we're following that process.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. And so how have you learned to delegate and basically let go? Because I know that's the biggest barrier for a lot of entrepreneurs, also managers. How have you gone through that process of letting go and delegating work to somebody else as you've grown over the years?
Yeah. So this is really interesting. When this first got my attention, I don't even remember what year this is, but the Wall Street Journal, a reporter from the Wall Street Journal had approached me about a product I had launched to the market for my own business. And it like for the time, it was something that was really, it was unique and it's interesting. And I still offer it and it's cool and all that kind of stuff and whatever. And I thought that the story was going to be about this like really cool, innovative service I had launched and how unique it was. And through the process of doing the interviews in preparation for the story, like the reporter picked up on this thread of why isn't this company bigger? Like she kept asking the question of like, why isn't this company bigger? And it was really interesting, was like her big insight was that I was keeping it small because I felt like I had to have my thumbprint on everything. And it was like a big eye opener to me that I was on the front page of the money section of the Wall Street Journal, but the angle of the story was startups founder, complains that the company just can't get bigger because she's her own worst enemy, right?
Yeah.
And it was a huge, like, it was a wake-up call. Like, I felt like I had been just completely doused in cold water or whatever. And so from that moment forward, I was like, okay, so if somebody from the outside, a reporter from the Wall Street Journal, you know, was able to pick up like what I thought was going to be like the greatest opportunity of my business career became one of the most embarrassing experiences of my life, where she's like, yeah, you know, this is a dilemma. This founder, she can't get out of her own way because she feels like she has to have her unique thumbprint on everything. Now, fast forward to like recent years, like I'm a kinder, gentler, like different kind of leader now, where my mantra is my presence is more powerful than my productivity. And when I really viewed what my role is as a founder and a CEO, and really thought about like, what do I like, why did I start this company? What is it that I'm trying to create in this world? Where's my highest, best use to this world? How am I going to like unconstrain the organization? Well, I need to unconstrain the organization by unconstraining the organization. Therefore, what should my role be? My
Yeah.
role as a leader is coach, mentor, you know, subject matter expert, but really coach, mentor. And when I embrace this concept of my presence is more powerful than my productivity, I started doing less, right? And so when you're doing less, that means that you're delegating more. And
Yeah.
you know, I'm a strategist. That's what I do for a living, right? Well, you can't be strategic if you're doing everything. And you aren't able to grow the business in the right direction if you're strangling it with every little thing that you want to do your way, right? And so I, you know, like over the decades of my career, I saw like different iterations of myself, the non-delegating me, which was the control freak part of me. Like I love being the hero. There are a lot of founders and CEOs, business leaders who like love to be heroic, right? Everybody wants to be Kobe Bryant in the last seconds of the game, right?
Yeah.
And score the winning basket. It makes us feel great, and it like releases endorphins and all of that. Well, all anybody ever saw of me was that was me like coming in and saying, get out of the way, let me take care of this, like let me take care of it myself. Well, like your organization can't grow if you're still just doing all the work, right? And so yeah, I mean, like that Wall Street Journal article, huge wake up call to me. Like there's nothing better than having it reflected to you in like top tier print and online media for everybody in the freaking world to see what a poor delegator you are.
Yeah.
But then also like just my own realization, like this could be so much more if I would let other people in, let other people be in their zone of genius, like my highest, best use to the organization, coach, mentor, and also just be really, really freaking good at hiring and empowering people to do the very best that they can. So that's, you know, that's kind
Yeah.
of, those are my big learnings about delegation over the years. The Wall Street Journal article is like, you know, that's a life lesson. The
I've got
kind
to
that
look that
I
up.
hope that nobody else gets to learn, right?
Well, I got to look it up because I didn't realize that that was out there. But it sounds like, I mean, it was a huge wake up call for you. And when I think about the example of Kobe Bryant, like you can't just say, hey, I'm going to grow this team Deb or Lakers is going to be successful just because Kobe Bryant is the number one star player and he's the one doing everything.
Right.
Like you have to have him. He's enabling everybody else on his team
Oh,
to
yeah.
help. He might be
I mean,
team captain, but he's helping it.
he needed someone to pass to him, right? He needed
Yeah.
defense to hold off the opponents. I mean, like he's arguably one of the best basketball players of all time. I mean, you know, it's sad what happened to him, but you know, you look at him and you look at the trajectory of his career. He didn't do it all alone. He was a star player, but he, you know, he had a whole bunch of people around him. I lived
Yeah.
in Chicago in the 1990s during sort of the reign of the Chicago Bulls, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Steve Kerr, people like that. When you think about that group of people, it wasn't just Michael Jordan by himself. Yeah, he's the one with like the brand name on the Nike shoes and all of that, but he needed a team.
And that's
He never would have been able to achieve those things. And like the Bulls won those championships. Michael Jordan didn't win those championships. So I mean,
yeah.
there's a lot there to unpack. But this idea, like going back to this idea of like your your presence being more powerful than your productivity, I'm not going to get measured in how much stuff I do, right? Like,
No, it's
yeah, and I want people not to admire me because I was good at getting stuff done. I want people to admire me because I nourished their souls and that I nurtured them. I taught them something. I empowered them to be in their zone of genius and achieve their own potential. Well, every time I'm in there, like being the control freak that I know that I can be, wanting to have my thumbprint on everything, that's excluding someone else from having their opportunity in the light.
yeah. There's a lot to unpack here, and I think what I'm getting is, it's I'm an ex control freak as well, so I totally
You
get
have a
it.
club for like recovering control freaks, right?
So I totally get it when I'm the consultant or I'm the entrepreneur, but then at the end of the day, like me wanting to do everything, I mean just reviewing all the documents, but actually even doing the changes and margins and the graphics and everything, I realized that I need to step back and let my team, and especially my executive assistant, like do it, because she can flourish in the environment if I let go of things. But also it gives her an opportunity to move up, to learn new skills, to
Absolutely. And
become, someone much better. And
I
it
was
just it's
damaging
uplifting everybody.
relationships. Like as an ex-control freak, you probably were too. Like I was damaging relationships because all anyone ever saw of me was the problem-solving Deb. Which the problem-solving Deb comes in with sharp elbows and is like, okay, get out of the way. Let me take care of this, right? That
Yeah.
doesn't do a whole lot for interpersonal relationships. So, people flourish. You use that word. They flourish under conditions where they can be increasingly self-actualized. When we attempt to hold everything, control everything, do everything, we're preventing people from moving up Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah. And you're basically you're enabling them so that they are able to grow themselves, but also grow up that Maslow's hierarchy. And it's a win-win for everybody. It's not like you're losing anything. As a control freak, you are losing control. But when you learn that it's not losing control, but you're really delegating and you're letting other people build their skills and build your team, then it really actually lifts you up.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of this analogy of the rocks and sand? You have a vase, and you have
I've
some
heard of
rocks
it.
and you have sand. They tell this story, like a lot of business coaching organizations, they talk about this, but this
Maybe just give us a little background
Yeah.
on that. Because for people who don't know,
So you have a vase, you have some rocks, you have some sand. So if I take this empty vase and I fill it with sand, and then I fill it with sand and it gets to about here, how many more rocks can I put in there? How many rocks can I put? I might be able to stack 1 or 2 rocks on top of the sand, right?
yeah,
Right.
not much.
Let's say, for instance, I have the vase. The vase is this tall. I take the sand, or I take the rocks. I put the rocks in first. I put all the rocks in there. Then I pour the sand in there. There's a better chance I'm going to get all of the rocks and all of the sand in there because the sand is going to fill in between the rocks. Right? And then the vase is full. I don't have a bunch of rocks that have like gone over the top of the vase. And this is an analogy for business and for work. Those rocks are the big strategic initiatives that are going to move your organization forward. There are things like we need to set up a whole new CRM and marketing automation system, right? If all you're dealing with is sand, that thing is going to fall over the top of the vase every single time, right? Because it's too big. But if you put the rocks in first and then fill in the sand and focus on the rocks and knock off the rocks one at a time, you can get all the rocks and the sand done. When you don't delegate, you can never get to the rocks because you're always dealing with sand. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And then you're drowning in your own sand.
You're drowning in your own sand. It's quicksand, right? So
Yeah.
So it's a simple example, but it kind of shows you how you can cut off your potential as an organization by being focused on the sand. So the example that you were giving before where you're like, yeah, I was like adjusting the margins and I'm doing the graphics and all that kind of stuff, that is sand.
It's not moving the business.
No, and as the leader of the organization or as the leader of your department or the leader of your project or your initiative or whatever, you're in charge of rocks. You
Yeah.
get measured by rocks. Like your progress as an organization is measured in rocks, not in sand. And so delegation is so essential to making sure that you can handle the rocks. And like the strategic leader of the business, I don't know, like I think that you want my strategic brain power thinking about like this new business pitch. You want me thinking about I've been negotiating a $1 million plus contract with a client since October. Like you want my big fat brain on that. You don't want me adjusting the margins in your document.
No. And actually, this even though it's a simple example, it is really powerful because I didn't think about, I'm the little margins or the little graphics or the typo and all that. That's really the sand, and that is not moving the business. You want to be able to move the business, and you want to take those rocks and make the strategic decisions. So I appreciate that. Simple examples, it's just giving me an aha moment here.
Yeah, well, I'm glad, as somebody who has mentored you over the last year, like I've seen you increasingly get more focused on rocks and, finding somebody to take care of a lot of the sand is one of the things that ensures that I go forward. I mean, you know this about me because we know each other, but I have a relationship with an executive assistant that goes back about 5 years where I could not do what I do without her. I am so reliant on her and so irrationally loyal to her. Like there's just there's
Speaking about irrational loyalty.
yeah, but I just like there's so much that I can't do without her. Like I got back from vacation. I was in Spain for 10 days. I was lost in my email. Like, and this happens to me if I don't look at email for 2 days, right? So imagine 10 days I was gone. I wasn't looking at email. She's like, well, do you have this? So-and-so wrote to you about this. I was like, I'm lost in my email. I don't know what to do. And she was like, all right, let me help you. Right? Because I look at things and I'm absolutely paralyzed by choice, by analysis, all of these things. And so having another human being there to like sort of moderate some of that, helps me, it helps me be A, less miserable, and B, less confused.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, it sounds like she comes in and she structures her day, but she also eliminates all the noise, all the sand that you don't need to be focused on. She allows you to focus on the big rocks.
Yep, 100%, 100%. And some of the sand is stuff like, following up, like doing follow-ups. Oh my gosh, like, somebody that I've had a meeting with and
Yeah.
that I owe them something or whatever, she comes to me and she's like, would you like me to follow up with so-and-so? It looks like there hasn't been any communication between the two. I was like, oh gosh, yes, please. Right?
That's awesome. Then you don't have to think about it. It's like the cognitive energy that takes to think about, oh, here's a follow-up. I mean, it sounds simple, but it's really a lot of cognitive energy.
Oh, it is. And things like I travel a lot for my work, right? And, since the beginning of March, I was away literally every week since the beginning of March. And it was absolutely exhausting. There were times where I didn't know where I was supposed to be when. Having somebody proactively think about those things and say, Deb, I see you're going to New Jersey for a meeting. I noticed that you don't have a car or a flight. Would you like me to book those things for you?
The
I
basics.
can tell you how many times I've shown up in a city and I'm like, I don't know where I'm staying, right? And so having somebody who is like proactively looking ahead at my calendar and thinking about like where I'm going to be, what I'm going to need, like those cycles, like, could you even imagine the most, like, me showing up at a place and not having a hotel room?
Yeah. I mean, most people have to book and plan all that stuff. But I mean, for you, your executive assistant is taking that off your plate. And so it really frees you up to think about, okay, what do I need to do for my strategic meeting that I'm meeting with some clients? I got to spend more time on that. So it sounds like, I mean, she's really freeing you up to elevate you to do what you do best.
Oh, yes. A couple of weeks ago, I left my car keys. I can't remember if I told you this story. I left my own car keys in a rental car in the airport in Newark, New Jersey. Did I tell you this story?
No.
Oh my gosh. So I rented a car. You know how cars today, like you just put the keys in your purse or in your pocket or whatever and you push a button, right?
Yeah.
So I come back to Newark Airport. It's after midnight. I'm returning a rental car. I reach into my purse. I throw some keys up on the dash. I leave. I go get on my flight. I get home to Salt Lake City. I go to get into my parked car and I cannot open my door. And I'm like, what's going on here? And I'm like, is this somebody else's Porsche? I mean, I was running through all the things. I pulled the keys out of my purse. They are the keys to the car I rented in New Jersey. And when I returned the car in New Jersey, I returned the car with the keys to my Porsche. So my assistant spent half a day like trying to track down a human being at the Avis counter in Newark, New Jersey to see if they had recovered my car keys because I had their car keys. And how are we going to arrange a switch, right?
Yeah.
Do you know how I mean, I almost called you for a ride. Like I was like stranded at the airport. I'm like, who am I going to call? You know, I have another set of keys to the car. I ended up Ubering home and like getting my keys and then someone else drove me back and it was okay. And then
yeah.
Stranger things have happened than this, but the very next week I was going to Newark again and I went to Newark and I went to the Avis counter and I was like, I'm here for my keys. Like, but she had to track down the phone number and find the guy and ensure that he had the keys and figure out where I'm FedExing the other keys back to.
Oh, wow.
That would have been 8 hours worth of work for me. Plus I was stressed out from traveling and from being stranded at the airport. Like having another human being in my court whose entire job is to ensure that like business goes as usual is, if you don't have an assistant, you are an assistant is basically what it comes down to.
Yeah. And I made a post about that. I mean, it makes sense. And that got me to think about all the things that I'm doing because if I don't have an assistant, I am the assistant. Mm-hmm. And what are other examples of things that you have your executive assistant do for you? Things that people don't think about. They're like, okay, well, you can delegate this, you can delegate that. I mean, it seems really simple. It's like, hey, I need to track my key down. But what are the things that are other examples that you're like, it's a lifesaver, it's a game changer for you?
Oh yeah, I mean it's stuff like I get an errant charge on my credit card. I'm not advocating for this, but I might get something I don't recognize. Like she'll call American Express as me, right? She logs into stuff for me. Oh, let me tell you,
Deb Gabor.
How many times a week I forget my password to this or that or whatever, and I'm like, can you please help me hack back into whatever system this is? Which I'm saying from a computer security perspective, I'm sure there are IT people out there who want to shoot me in the face for saying these things. However, like it is like the amount of time she saves me, it's immeasurable. But then there are other things I've had assistants do for me, which not this current assistant, but a previous assistant who has like gone on and like started a business of her own. Like, she's done everything from, oh gosh. Well, she packed me and moved me, not once, but 3 times. So when I say packed me and moved me, the first time it was 2016. I think I was on a business trip for like 7 days or something. And the move just happened to be inconveniently in the middle of that. And she arranged packers, came and supervised the packers, supervised the movers at the other end, hired the people to come in and like hang my TVs and hang my pictures and get everything installed. I literally left from one house at the beginning of the business trip. I came home to the new house and she had left me like a treasure map to find my underwear in my underwear drawer. Right?
That's awesome.
Yeah. And, she used to do things for me that, this was the combination of like business and personal assistant, like, the ultimate assistant. Moving is an extreme, but she used to do things for me, that involved my kid and stuff like that. And I used to joke around. I said, you're like an auxiliary mom. And so she like took off and she started this company called Auxiliary Mom. And I think I told you this before, Michelle, she's like planning my daughter's wedding now. So, when I think about executive assistants, personal assistants, these are highly, highly capable highly valuable people to have
Oh,
around
yes.
you. So this is something that a lot of entrepreneurs really, really resist, is having a great assistant. And I know many people who have businesses that are far bigger than mine who exist without an assistant. They try to do everything with like AI assistants and Calendly and stuff like that. Oh my gosh, I tried to use Calendly. Did I have my calendar so screwed up? Like when I meet with people, well, you know this, we schedule meetings. You go right to her.
Yeah.
You go right to my assistant.
Oh, yeah. I know her now.
Yeah. And that way we can be assured that I will actually show up. I will be there. There will be a Zoom link, or if we're meeting in public, I know where we're actually going to be. If you leave
Yeah.
that up to me, I am the least detail-oriented person in the world. You and I are going to be on opposite continents at the time that we're supposed to be having a meeting. So it's so incredibly valuable to me. She's indispensable. And every assistant I've ever had has been indispensable.
Yeah, no, that's amazing to hear. And you mentioned something about how a lot of entrepreneurs are really resistant to delegating or having an assistant. Why do you think that is?
I think that a lot of people first starting out, they feel like it's an expenditure, that it's it's a big amount of money. And until you actually experience the productivity boost, I think it's hard to get your head around that, right? For me, it is a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer. And I think I've told you this before. I have a very, very highly paid assistant, and she is worth every cent. Every cent. And
Yeah.
it is not an expenditure that I regret. And I remember like when I hired an assistant, like when I was running my own business, when I hired an assistant for the first time, like this whole world of opportunity and possibility opened up to me. I really had to suck it up. And truly, I think a lot of entrepreneurs avoid it because they think it's an unnecessary, or maybe an unfathomable expense. But then at the same time, I've heard people I know, like I have a very dear friend. She runs a large concrete company and she's very successful, but she's been unsuccessful in having assistants. Like and you may hear this from other people. She's like, I've never had a good assistant. Like these assistants are bad. All assistants are bad. I can't find anyone who would do it just like I would, or who would do it at my standard. And I'm like, well, how much training have you given them? How much coaching have you given them? How much
Yeah.
communication do you give them? What are your expectations? How clear are you about these things? There is an investment that you as a business leader, business owner, solopreneur, entrepreneur, mompreneur, whatever, that you have to be willing to invest in that relationship in order to make it work. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they're like, it's not worth the time that I'm going to take. Like I have to be very honest, like to onboard a new assistant it is work, but it is like 150% worth it work. You just have to be in the right frame of mind and the right mindset and be positive about the future productivity gains. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs want instant gratification. They're like, I want this to be instantly better. So I have a client, I helped him like create the job description and the expectations, the job performance scorecard, all that kind of stuff for an assistant. I even interviewed assistant candidates for him. We narrowed the field. I top graded the heck out of them. Like we found somebody, we hired her, and I just caught up with him last week and I was like, how's it working out with your assistant? And he's like, I had to let her go because she didn't have anything to do. That's
No,
not
there's
her
always
fault.
something to do.
That's not her fault. It's his fault.
That's his mental challenge and block.
Yep.
That he could not let go of things.
Yeah. He was like, she didn't have anything to do. And I was like, well, how are you spending your time? And then he told me, and I was like, I can't talk to you about this anymore. But seriously, like if the same thing, my friend with the concrete company, she's like, I just can't get a good assistant. I'm like, oh, there are a million good assistants out there.
Oh yeah. No, there's a ton of them out there. But it's a mental block.
Yeah. And you have to be willing to make the investment. And it is an emotional investment. It truly is. You got to let some stuff go. And the biggest thing that I realized, I have a company that does research strategy and marketing, right? nobody ever died from a marketing mistake. People die from engineering mistakes, but nobody ever died from a marketing mistake. And so, like, if something comes back to me that I've delegated that isn't exactly what I want, no one is going to die from it. And so, like, this emotional investment in an assistant, you got to get over yourself.
Yeah.
Seriously, like, for me to be successful with assistants, and I mean, and this goes back, like I've had an assistant ever since I had my company. That was my first hire, was an assistant, right? But for other people, it's like you really do have to get over yourself. You really do. Like, you are
Yeah.
not so important that there isn't someone else in the world who can check your freaking email the same way that you can. Right?
Yeah. And I love what you said is like what you do is low risk. And so if it's not going to kill anybody,
No.
then you can delegate it. And if there's going to be a mistake, you can always fix it. There's also another saying that says executive assistants or assistants don't cost you money. They actually make you money.
Oh, yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
having that mindset shift is so powerful, because I mean, before I had my executive assistant, I was thinking, okay, it's going to cost me money. It's going to cost me money, and I can do it better than they
How
can.
can you afford not to do it is the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
You know? Like, you're
And so-
losing money if you, like, it's opportunity cost is what it is. Like, every...
Well, you're losing time too.
Yeah.
It's
time is
and
money.
and
I don't know about
opportunity
you. Time is money in my world, for sure.
cost. Yes.
Yeah. And also, like, the drain on my psyche, I'll be very honest. Like, doing work, A, that I'm not good at, B, that I don't care to do. It's not good for anyone, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm in the same boat. That's where it was a breaking point for me, was when I was doing things that I did not enjoy, I was not good at, and it was really draining on me. And so things that are supposed to take half a day would take me 3 days, and I'd still be sitting on it. Never got done.
Yep.
And so that was my breaking point.
Yeah. So, but I'm with you on that. So, entrepreneurs, if you're listening to this, like, if you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant. That's truly what it comes down to. And rocks and sand, you can't be moving the rocks if you are breathing sand, you know?
And drowning in your own sand.
Yeah.
You're drowning in yourself, and you're not getting out of the way.
Yeah, totally.
So, well, I want to kind of wrap up, and I want to ask kind of a last, like, are there any other creative things or stories that you have had your executive assistant do for you over the years? It sounds like you've had 15 years or so of having assistants.
Oh yeah. I mean, I probably my entire career, I've always had an assistant. So yeah, I mean, moving me, that's very creative, and I've had her do it 3 times. You know, like, creative things, my current assistant really came forward proactively. And when I kind of pivoted my company in the last year and a half, and, you know, got rid of a lot of functions that I didn't want to do internally anymore, because they were capabilities that were not differentiating. So it didn't make any sense strategically for me to have those things in-house. She came to me proactively to say, like, here are areas where I can step in to be a resource. And she recognized, like, it's not our job to sell people services. It's our job to solve problems for people. And so she took on, like, the vendor onboarding and vendor relationships part of our business, which is, like, all of the outsourced partners that we use. She manages all those relationships, which I used to think that I had to be that person or whatever. Turns out I don't have to be that person at all. So she does all of the contracting, all of the billing, like, all of the scope of work, all of the negotiation, all of the pricing and all that kind of stuff for those kinds of services. And, I mean, she's a highly, highly capable person. And so, you know, that was a really creative area that's very much helped our business move forward. I have a third of the number of employees, and I make 6 times the money that I was making when I had all of those functions in house. And so like having my assistant be the hub for all, like she was the hub with all these spokes, that has enabled more profitability, like more free time for me, better work life integration. My work is now more defined in the areas that are like really what I should be doing, which is like strategy for the company, strategy for our clients, which is a part of the business that I really, really like, working on the business, and then also, enabling me to like really serve in this role of being like coach, mentor, and sort of servant leader to the company rather than just being this person who comes in and does a bunch of stuff and then leaves.
Yeah. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, the fact that she took over a function that you were doing and you've reduced your head count, but you're more profitable than you were before. I mean, that says a lot. I think it's a testament to what you've learned over the years, but what you do as as an entrepreneur, delegating to your team.
Yeah, totally. And it very like she has been instrumental. Like one of the positions I eliminated was director of operations. I just eliminated that position altogether. I was like, I don't need this. So she also, my assistant, has been able to step into the role of like taking on a lot of the administrative operational functions. She manages our HR relationships. She manages our bookkeeping relationship. She manages our accounting relationship, like those kinds of things. But then also she's in charge of like all of our systems and software licenses and all of that. Like she came to me today.
Yeah.
She was like, "Do you want to keep this subscription?" Like she analyzes our bills every month and she's like, "We're still subscribing to this and I haven't seen anybody using it in a while." So she's turned into this proactive resource that like I don't ever have to tell her to do anything.
Yeah.
And
I mean, she's telling you what to do.
oh, we all work for Nikki is basically what's going on. So, um,
I'll have to clip that and give that to her.
yeah, right. No, seriously, like you want her taking care of all of these things. In the same way, just because I can do my own taxes doesn't mean I should. Like
Yeah.
having and truly like having an administrative professional take care of that stuff. I am so bad at all that stuff. So bad. Right? It just makes
Well, you
everything
admit
work
it.
better.
Yeah, you can admit it. And I was going to say that she sounds like a chief of staff in many ways. I mean, you've had her, you've helped kind of mentor her and get her to a point where she can actually delegate and even some of the strategic stuff. Like she can help with some of that.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
all right. Well, I appreciate your time and just, the stories that you shared, your honesty, because I think that's a huge piece to help other people think about other ways that they can delegate, let go. It's like a whole mental block because that's what I've seen with me. And I've seen it in other people as well. So I guess, is there anything else you would like to share or promote about you or how people can find you online?
Yeah, probably the best way to find me. I'm on LinkedIn, D Gabor, or you just you can go to my website, debgabor.com. There's links to all my books and videos. And, if you're interested in brand strategy and authority and stuff like that, that's a good way to find me. Probably the best way to find me. And you know what? If you submit an inquiry via any of those places, Nikki is the person who picks those up. So I get lots of inbound inquiries and stuff like that, not just sales pitches, but people who legitimately want to find me for things like, speaking engagements, podcast interviews, stuff like that. Like she's the person who fields all that sort of stuff and manages my calendar through that. So yeah, you can find me at debgabor.com. That's probably the best way.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time, Deb. And yeah, I appreciate all the insights and stories because I think it's going to help other people like me.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And Michelle, I hope that your podcast is wildly successful and that your business continues to thrive. It's always fun seeing what you're doing.
Aw, thank you, Deb.
All right.